mention your poll.
Oops. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Narrative Live. It's good to be with you on day 2 of the Democratic debates. Dem debates are here. My phone's working. It's a busy night. Sorry for the little false start there, Tracy, but people heard about you mentioning at the start of the feed that I had a poll up all day about who won last night's debate, and we'll reveal the winner of who that is, or who everyone said was the winner of last night's debate, coming up in today's show. Plus, we should mention that we've also got some exciting stuff coming up tonight about Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard? I'm not even sure I say it correctly.
You're asking me. I can't pronounce anyone's
I mean, I don't know who she
I would
is,
guess
but she's big news today. We'll preview tonight's big debate. We'll give you our winners and losers of last night's debate. Greg Ollier couldn't be with us tonight, but he will come back on another night. So there's lots of big stuff.
He had something come up, but we'll gladly reschedule. And thanks, Greg, for reaching out and let us know.
And also big news in the Supreme Court today. It was one of the most shocking days I've had in a long time, where I felt a little bit hopeless, but we'll find our way out of it. Here we go with our starting block. And in the starting block, you see 3 big pictures. That's Paul Manafort looking very, I would say he's looking quite dashing at number 2.
For him to be our number 2 story, number 1 has to be a biggie.
Yeah, and number 3 is Trump and Twitter. We'll get to that one too. It's also a big story coming up today. But let's begin with the big story of the day, because it really was a huge day for democracy, and not a good day. Tracy, take us through this one.
Yeah, so the Supreme Court came down today ruling on the gerrymandering case, and it didn't go well. You can read this headline. It says Supreme Court justices turned their backs on voters in the gerrymandering ruling, advocates say. And that was from, I believe it's NBC News.
Yeah, it does look like that. And you have Justice Kagan's dissent next to the headline there, but that is an incredible dissent that she put out, arguing that really the court has left behind democracy, using the words "they had beat democracy," which is just a stunning statement. So what else? What else was the reaction to today's decision, and what does it all mean?
Well, I don't know. I think that you texted me, and I feel some other people think that, is it time to march? I mean, what is going on, Zev? I mean, how are we going to get through the 2020 election? I mean, I think people were really saddened and disappointed by this ruling.
I send that text every once in a while, but this is the first time I felt like maybe it's time to get out and march. It certainly does begin to feel like there are less options on the table all the time, but I felt that way a few weeks ago, and then I felt better a week afterwards. So let's see how things play out. I do think that this is a particularly stunning ruling because basically what it does is it changes the constitutional fabric of America. You know, we're designed as a co-equal branches of government system, and within that system there are checks and balances. So the legislative branch can oversee the judicial branch in some things, and vice versa. And by taking away the judicial branch's ability to oversee gerrymandering, there's no way to redress gerrymandering. It basically goes back to the states, goes back to the legislatures, which means you need an election, and a big election, to overturn the existing fabric of power, which is not easy to do in America, which is already so divided. And maybe to illustrate this point, it's worth looking at this through. I got this through Ari Berman, the author who works at Mother Jones as well. But the original slide comes from Rachel Maddow's show. But you could sort of get a sense of what this means. When you look at the Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and North Carolina state houses, in each of those cases, the popular vote is quite significantly in the Democrats' favor. But because of gerrymandering, look at the number of seats in each one and how far it leans towards the right. And, you know, in some cases, unbelievable. Wisconsin, 64% to 45% of the reality of what the vote is. And this is what basically the Koch brothers, through Kavanaugh, through Gorsuch, have now delivered to America. We now have a situation where this is enshrined unless there's some sort of big legislative sweep that happens, which could happen. I mean, you know, if ever there was a time for a transformative election, 2020 is it. And all we need is a good candidate, which we'll see if we can get that.
Is it going to be a fair election, though, Zev? I mean, we do have that to worry about.
Well, they haven't been fair up to now, as it turns out, because when you look at those old maps, you know, they haven't been that fair at all up until now. But the chances
I mean, foreign interference like we had last time.
Well,
that's something we have to worry about.
I think foreign interference is a reality of our lives now. We have to learn how to be aware of it and counter it. And we'll do some of that later on in the show when we tell you a little bit more of Tulsi Gabbard. Let's get into the second story, because there's also the census thing came down today. That was not good news for Trump. But we'll get to, you know, that story. You'll find out about that later on or somewhere else. We got so much to go, and there's a debate coming. Story number 2.
Paul Manafort back in court, but this time, Zev, it was for New York State criminal charges. And today he pled not guilty to all charges. The judge set his next hearing date for October 9th. I gotta say that he looks completely different. When I saw his picture at first earlier when he was going into court, I was like, that can't be the same guy, but it is the same guy.
I think he looks quite good. I know you were saying he looks a little. I haven't seen the video, but he looks like a little George Clooney-esque in this particular picture.
With the salt and pepper hair.
Yeah, the salt and pepper hair, the tan. He looks rested. He looks like he's had a few full meals. He doesn't have the Italian tailoring, but you know, it's easier probably inside than it was on the outside. He is facing state charges. You've been on this story since the very beginning, Tracy. You have to get the credit for this, because you've signaled that the state, especially the New York state, will be having these pardon-proof set of charges right from the very beginning. I don't think anyone beat you on this story. And so this is significant that it's happening.
Zev, and I, you know, Manafort's the first one, so we'll see how this goes, and if there will be anybody else who is going to face some New York State charges, because I would bet there are.
I suspect you know what you're talking about, but I also think that there has to be, because the federal cases are all, you know, pardonable, and we clearly are seeing with Flynn and elsewhere that is exactly what Trump is planning to do. And he needs to be dead-ended on that one. And our third big story on the starting block today, speaking of dead-ending Trump.
I like to call this one rule breakers, because basically Twitter came out saying that they have this new policy that they're going to flag tweets by world leaders who they think actually break the Twitter rules. They're not going to delete them or suspend them because they might be of public interest, is what Twitter is saying, but they'll flag them for us.
And the translation means Donald Trump will still let you tweet, but we might occasionally tag you with a little note saying you've broken every rule in our book, but we're still letting you tweet because apparently you're above Twitter law, even if you're not above the real law. I bet you that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
I'm not so sure that that's going to happen.
I mean,
and if it did, Zev, it would just give him ammunition to go on a rant about how conservative voices are being discriminated against on social media. So, it's a catch-22 here.
I noticed this, and of course in Reddit yesterday, for those of you who are Reddit followers, there was a big forum there that was taken down or quarantined away from the main page, Donald Trump forum. So we're beginning to see the tech companies at least step up a little bit in their responsibilities. Not all the tech companies, but certainly Twitter and Reddit have done their job. Hey, let's get into our feature story of the day. It's Dis and Dat on Dem Debates, and it's part two. There's a sequel. There might even be 15 or 30 of these coming up because debate season is just beginning. Last night was big.
That picture is a little bit of a hint, I think, of what we're going to talk about there, isn't it, Zev?
It is. I mean, it was a fascinating night. I mean, it wasn't a blockbuster kind of, wow, that person's going to lead the country and change the world. I didn't get that. But I did think it was an interesting and important night for everybody to see who the candidates were, to see the breadth of the candidates, and also, in some cases, who shouldn't be there. And that's becoming pretty apparent who shouldn't be there as we unpack the week's activities. So you've got this first part. Why don't you take us through what's going on here?
I think the biggest takeaway for me was Castro was a standout. Mm-hmm. He was not, we called it earlier, I'll say it, I can say it because it's our show. I'm going to say that he bitch slapped Beto, okay? And whether or not you agree with Castro's policy on decriminalizing illegal immigrants, because that's a whole nother issue, he was not afraid to stand up to Beto on stage and point out their differences and what Beto has voted against and what Castro's for. And I think that, to me, really made a statement that he isn't afraid to challenge on things. And we need somebody, whether it's him or who it is going forward, we need somebody that can stand up and challenge and bitch slap against Donald Trump. That's just my own personal opinion.
It's a very astute opinion because, in fact, when people are looking at policy, of course we're interested in policy, but people are not going to vote on policy. They're going to vote on individuals who they think have the, kahunas, right. I don't know how you say it, to take on the big gun. And in this case, the gun is very big. I mean, Donald Trump is not a shy, unintimidating person. He you remember that scene with him walking around Hillary Clinton in 2016? Someone has got to stand up to him. And we saw a little bit of that in Julian Castro last night when he stood up to Beto. Now, Beto is not as complicated a challenger as Donald Trump will be, but it's worth taking a look at this clip to see exactly how Julian Castro did this, because he did what no other candidate did on the stage last night.
Be very clear. The reason that they're separating these little children from their families is that they're using Section 1325 of that act, which criminalizes coming across the border, to incarcerate the parents and then separate them. Some of us on this stage have called to end that section, to terminate it. Some, like Congressman O'Rourke, have not. And I want to challenge all of the candidates to do that. I just think it's a mistake, Bethel. I think it's a mistake. And I think that if you truly want to change the system, then we got to repeal that section. If not, then it might as well be the same policy.
Let me respond to this very briefly. Actually, as a member of Congress, I helped to introduce legislation that would ensure that we don't criminalize those who are seeking asylum and refuge in this country. If you're fleeing desperation, then I want to make sure that you're treated with respect.
I'm still talking about everybody else.
But you're looking at just one small part of this. I'm talking about a comprehensive rewrite of our immigration laws.
That's not true.
And if we do that, I don't think it's asking too much for people to follow our laws when they come to this country.
I'm talking about millions of folks. A lot of folks that are coming are not seeking asylum. A lot of them are undocumented immigrants, right? And you said recently that the reason you didn't want to repeal Section 1325 was because you were concerned about human trafficking and drug trafficking. But let me tell you what, Section 18, Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Title 21, and Title 22 already cover human trafficking and drug trafficking. I think that you should do your homework on this issue. If you did your homework on this issue, you would know that we should repeal this section.
This is an issue.
The bitch slap heard in Miami. Look, I think...
I mean no disrespect to Beto by saying that, please. You guys don't take this the wrong way. I just mean we need somebody who isn't afraid to stand up for what they believe in, and punch hard. We need somebody who will punch hard, and I saw that in Castro last night.
I am going to say a little disrespectful thing to Beto. As nice a guy as he seems, I don't think he's at the level to do this, and I don't think he's performing in the right presidential, candidacy level. I don't think he has the thing to go through it, and it's no disrespect for him because he's a great politician in that regard, but. He can't keep coming up with these hackneyed, scripted answers to every question because we've already heard it, Beto. We've been following you. We know the stories. And it's great that you have these memorized so well. But if you're not responding to what people are asking you, which you didn't repeatedly, you're not delivering. And, we need some room in that debate stage. It was just, it felt to me like maybe people got 6 or 7, maybe 8 minutes out of everything.
Yeah.
That's not enough time to make a case. And if someone's sitting there, and he was one of the top users of time, if he's taking up that much time, he shouldn't be there. And I'm sure he's recognizing that. I'm sure his people are recognizing that. He's looking probably for a graceful way out. I do think this was a lot about money. I think Castro and Beto are chasing the same dollars, and Castro needed to get rid of Beto in order to become the Latino representative. I don't say Latino representative because that's not, of course, what he is, but someone who can speak for that community from within that community. So interesting. What else you got?
Oh, well, can we play a little clip of, is it Bill de Blasio? I always say his name wrong.
It's Bill. It's Bill de Blasio. It is Bill de Blasio. I thought it is Bill de Blasio, the mayor from New York City.
Yesterday on our show, you told me, and you've covered him for a long time, so you told me watch because he's going to have some drop the mic moments. So me, I'm like popcorn, beer, waiting for him. Well, sure enough, he did, and I have a clip here of one that I thought was a real drop the mic moment.
That tragic photo of that parent, that child, and I'm saying this as a father. Every American should feel that in their heart, and every American should say that is not America. Those are not our values, but we have to get under the skin of why we have this crisis in our system, because we're not being honest about the division that's been fomented in this country, the way that American citizens have been told that immigrants somehow created their misery and their pain and their challenges. For all the American citizens out there who feel you're falling behind, who feel the American dream's not working for you, the immigrants didn't do that to you. The big corporations did that to you. The 1% did that to you. We need to be the party of working people, and that includes a party of immigrants. But first, we have to tell working people in America who are hurting that we're going to be on their side every single time against those big corporations who created this mess to begin with.
That's exactly what he does. He's a great politician. He's able to, connect with people's innermost fears and innermost dreams, and he resonates with them. He doesn't always deliver, but in this case, I think what the Democrats are crying out for is someone with vision, someone who can take us to a new place. Because we don't need the same policies of the past. That's not going to work. We know that's not going to work. So who's going to bring something new to the table? I don't think de Blasio's got that something new, but what he is bringing is passion and a way of communicating a vision, which I didn't see among any of the other people, including Elizabeth Warren on the stage last night. And it'll be an interesting night tonight when we see if any of the other candidates can show up and deliver on that.
Yeah, the other person I thought really showed a lot of passion last night was Booker.
Oh, yeah.
I have some issues with Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah.
Personal, just because.
Oh, yeah. You want to share?
You and I talked about this.
What are your thoughts on Amy?
I think that she is super smart and she has a lot of great ideas and policies, but she doesn't come across with that passion. To me, it was a little bit boring to watch her. There was no excitement in her voice. So the people who captured my attention were Castro and de Blasio, and we're going to see in this clip Cory Booker. He's very passionate in this speech of this part when he's talking about transgender and gay rights. So let's take a look.
Let's take a look at this.
Look, civil rights is some place to begin, but in the African American civil rights community, another place to focus on was to stop the lynching of African Americans. We do not talk enough about trans Americans, especially African American trans Americans, and the incredibly high rates of murder right now. We don't talk enough about how many children, about 30% of LGBTQ kids, who do not go to school because of fear. It's not enough just to be on the Equality Act. I'm an original co-sponsor. We need to have a president that will fight to protect LGBTQ Americans every single day from violence.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah,
This is the kind of passion I want to see tonight.
Yeah.
So I don't want to see the stoic faces and this is what I'm going to do. I want to see the fight in you, because if we're going to beat Trump, we need that fight. We need that spark.
and we need something that's not out there already. None of these people have articulated something that's completely new yet, and we need it. It's not going to, the same old, is not going to work. Cory Booker is a fantastic politician. Again, in my time covering politics in New York City, he would literally run up the streets and save someone's life from a burning fire. I think is one of the things he did. He's that kind of local hero in Newark. He stumbled along the way. He has some issues to deal with, but I think he won the night, according to some people last night, based especially on the Google searches, which we'll go into in a second with Tulsi Gabbard. So he is certainly one to watch, especially potentially as a vice presidential nominee. So we look ahead to tonight.
Let's talk about tonight a little bit.
A
Can we do that?
blockbuster night. Look at this lineup. It's a big night in American politics. Biden and Bernie both will be, I think, 80 when they enter office. I mean, it's these are old guys. Their ideas are not new, but they certainly provide some nostalgia to people who hearken for those nice old days. I'd say look out for Michael Bennet. I find him very, very interesting and thoughtful and poised, the senator.
I'm looking for Eric Swalwell to go big tonight.
You are right.
I feel like, he is on the House Intel and the House Judiciary Committees. Am I correct, Seth?
You are correct.
He knows more about Trump, Russia, and what's been going on than anybody else probably. And he is outspoken about Trump. So last night it seemed like nobody wanted to mention Trump, right? He was like, it was just like his name was just not there. It was, we're going to talk about us and our policies, but we're not going to talk about him. I'm looking for Eric tonight to talk about him.
You know what I think is the applause every time there was a jab taken at Donald Trump was so huge, and it's certainly the thing that's everyone is thinking about. It's policies are lovely and all of that, but what people are mostly looking for is someone that they can defeat Donald Trump. And Eric Swalwell is the kind of guy who can, because he has detail, he has charm, he's very used to talking about it. And he's not quite Kennedy, but he's got a little Kennedy-esque to him. He's an inspirational story, a guy who came from poverty. He's the first guy in his family to go to university. He's got a lovely wife and a beautiful young daughter, or two, I think, young daughters, I'm not sure. There's just a lot going for him that I think will resonate with the American population. And for a young congressman, he has all the goods, because he's seen all the counterintelligence stuff. He's been involved in every aspect of the impeachment process. He's right there in the middle, in the thick of things. And I would say the rest of that crowd are not going to be as good on that, with the exception of Kamala Harris, who's going to blow us away tonight.
I don't want to leave her out, because if we're going to talk, like we made a joke about a bitch slap last night. If we were going to talk about anybody who could really bitch slap a lot of people, I think it's going to be her.
The guy that's going in with the most weight on his shoulders tonight is Pete Buttigieg, and you would never have thought that a few weeks ago, because he was riding high. He was probably the phenom of the pre-primary season, and now he's facing these issues at in his city, and they don't look good. They involve something that impacts so many communities in America, the death of a black American at the hands of the police, that he maybe didn't handle as well as he could. And I suspect Kamala, as a former prosecutor and as someone who's certainly holding the mantle for the black American vote, I think you might see her take a shot at Pete Buttigieg tonight on this very issue, because she can do it. She's got the credibility to do it, and she's got the most to win if Pete Buttigieg falls out, because he is about 6 or 7% of the vote so far.
Yeah, and then we got Bernie. I mean, is there anything really to say other than we
Bernie's a
got Bernie
spoiler now,
tonight?
he already knows he's not going to win. He just knows that he's going to say that it's all rigged against him. And we all know about, his associations with, whatever things come out of Eastern Europe, bloc or wherever. He's having a watch party tonight in Serbia or something. But Bernie's also got 13 or 14% of the vote. So knocking him out is important. Knocking Buttigieg out tonight is, I said it wrong, but whatever, is important too. So those are things to look for tonight. I think it's going to be a huge night if Biden does not come out swinging like the old Biden that we loved, because he has not been that Biden recently, and it'll be interesting to see if he's got that firepower. I suspect he still does, but we'll only know
He
in an hour or
needs to
so.
have a huge night. He
Yeah.
needs to have a huge night. Especially taking the stage with all of these other people that they could be superstars themselves. So
Kamala's, we were wondering if she would take a hit at him. She has been quite critical of him about his cooperation with segregationists. But at the end of the day, I think they already have a deal. I think that if Biden is the nominee, she will be his running mate. It's just a prediction, I guess. I guess because I've seen it in picture. You see there's this photo. I wish I'd saved it for the show, but there's a photo of them out in the streets on the day that they met recently. That's the kind of photo test you do. You basically do it. You send them out into the streets, and then you test how the focus groups react to that. So I think this is what's in the marketplace. I think he definitely needs a black running mate, and she might be it. Cory Booker might be the other person. All right.
time will tell. I'm not making any of those assumptions yet. I'm gonna get through tonight, Zev. Let's get through that first.
Now, I was assaulted by a bunch of bots on Twitter today. Some of them were not bots, but a lot of them looked like bots, acted like bots, were bots, all supporting Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard, I've got to get her name right. I'm hoping people don't actually remember her name, because I feel like we're witnessing the attempt to create a political figure in our country who has no reason to be a political figure in our country. On a policy level, she does absolutely nothing. She says some of the strangest things. She's not really a Democrat when you come around to it. And yet, because of the way our system is now engineered, whether it's the conservative influence machines or the Russian influence machines, she won Google last night, and then on top of that, she won the Drudge Report last night. So let's walk through some of these things, because I took a little time. I don't like getting criticized by anyone, but bots, I definitely don't like getting criticized by. So here's what I learned today about Tulsi Gabbard. I'm going to get her name wrong all the time. So she was one of the Google's most searched candidates. It's interesting that before the debate, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Beto O'Rourke, and Tulsi were all on the most searched list. But during the debate, look at all the green, especially in the western part of the country and all the way up to the northeast. She really took fire, and maybe it's because of the way she looks. Some people were speculating that she's a very good-looking person, but I don't believe that that's really what it is. It could be that there was some bot activity around that. Now, Tracy, I reached out to Google today because I found this pretty interesting, and I didn't want to just go in the air.
Did they get back to you?
They have not got back to me up until now. They certainly knew our deadline time. I really want to know from Google if they've run any bot analysis on this stuff, because it's quite possible that there is a infrastructure of bots in America, something that could be run from other countries but VPN'd into this country, and that this could be a manufactured interest, and this is what it resulted in. Because not only, well, let's do this first. Let's take a look at how Google. This is a short clip I've taken off the Google tracking thing. So this, up until about 9:40 something, Tulsi Gabbard was not even present in the debates. But then by the end of that hour, you can see she's on the top line there. She dominates the search results for a very, very, very long time in a way that no other candidate was doing. Now, she was on the stage at that time. She was doing a lot of talking at that time. But to me, it's incredibly significant that it looks like an artificial sort of peak that she gets to, and then she stays up there all the way until the end. Look at that.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So I think that there is something to analyze here from the guys at Google, and I hope people do take this seriously, because it might not seem like something that important now if there are a bunch of bots are searching Tulsi Gabbard, but what if this continues and we land up with a Donald Trump? Because that's exactly what they did with Donald Trump way back then. So I want to share a couple of other things about her while we can.
Absolutely.
On the Drudge Report last night, which everyone knows is a conservative website that links to a bunch of other sites, they had a viewers poll. And on that poll, the conservative viewers of Drudge Report and readers of Drudge Report voted Tulsi as the winner of the debate, which is astounding because basically she's got 1% of the polling right now. She had 6.5 minutes of airtime yesterday, maybe give or take. That is not significant. Yet somehow Drudge and the conservatives who go to Drudge nominated her or voted for her as the winner of the first debate poll. And this is from Drudge Today. You see, it says, shock, Gabbard wins first debate poll. Well, it's interesting. That is his poll that he's talking about there. But then he links to this article from the Daily Mail. So the Daily Mail and the Drudge Report have had this long-standing arrangement. They basically boost each other's traffic in the United States. So Drudge will come up with something, and then Daily Mail will boost it, and then vice versa. So you often see Daily Mail stories. Now, people said to me today online, it's not one of America's biggest newspapers, and they're wrong. It is the number one online newspaper in America because it has a lot of clickbaity stuff. We all go on there.
It absolutely does. It's kind of, it reminds me like a TMZ type website.
It's
where
got
they gotcha. They'll get you. You click it, you're there.
Yeah. So it's a really it's a place where a lot of people go, and a lot of conservatives can be manipulated by it. And in what they did here is they took the Drudge Report story and then the poll, and then they amplified it into their audience. And then look who jumped on board. Breitbart jumped on board, Quartz jumped on board, and The Hill jumped on board. So if you're a conservative consumer of news, you actually might have walked away from yesterday thinking Tulsi Gabbard won the debate, and she did nothing of the sort. I mean, she was at best a lackluster performer, with a couple of dull moments. Now, what are the chances that all of this was happening, that we had both a Drudge poll victory for her and that the Google searches all happened at the same time? I think it's pretty unlikely that these things were coincidentally happening at the same time. I think they were really a coordinated effort. And here's some of the reasons why. Because it's time for, are you ready for this, Tracie?
I am.
It's time for some truth about Tulsi. So looking at her policies, she doesn't really ring like a Democrat. She maybe rings like a conservative, but she definitely rings like a Putinite. On the topic of Julian Assange, she has suggested that it's time to drop charges on him and let him go free. We know that Donald Trump loves WikiLeaks, even though his administration is currently pursuing a criminal case against him. And we know that Putin loves Julian Assange. He calls him a freedom fighter. On Bashar al-Assad, who's a genocidal dictator who's killed 500,000 people, she calls him not our enemy. Trump calls him not our problem. And Putin, who's basically Assad's best friend, says he's not your problem. Now, why this is important is because a couple of years ago, she decided she was going, on her own initiative, which is not really her own initiative because the Assad government invited her over, she went to visit Syria in the height of the civil war there, in the midst of this genocide taking place, paid for by the murderous dictator Bashar al-Assad, and came back, only told everyone when she returned where she was. And this is what she said, which is when you think about the fact that she was on a free trip by this dictator, visiting these people who are killing millions of people. This is what her response was to CNN. Let's take a look at this clip.
They expressed happiness and joy at seeing an American walking through their streets, but they expressed a question. They said, why is it that the United States, its allies and other countries are providing support, are providing arms to terrorist groups like al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, Arar al-Sham, ISIS, who are on the ground there raping, kidnapping, torturing, and killing the Syrian people, children, men, women, people of all ages. They asked me, why is the United States and its allies supporting these terrorist groups who are destroying Syria when it was al-Qaeda who attacked the United States on 9/11, not Syria? I didn't have an answer for them.
Well, I mean, it's stunning to me because this is a vet. This is someone who's seen war. This is someone who's seen the great damage that, maybe not chemical weapons, but she's certainly seen weapons of mass destruction cause a lot of damage. And she goes and visits a dictator who is using chemical weapons against children, and then has the gall to walk on the stage last night and say she's an anti-war candidate. No anti-war candidate would go visit a dictator committing genocide and inflicting death on his civilians using chemical weapons. Just not. Don't buy it. Sorry, Tulsi. It just doesn't ring true. On the Mueller report, she says there's no collusion. On the, which of course Trump will agree with, Putin will agree with too. And on her ties with Putin, because it's come up a few times, she says it's all fake news. We haven't heard that before. Trump says it's a hoax. Putin says who? Thought it'd be funny there. Maybe maybe it wasn't. But
I got it, Zev.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I got a couple of more things and then I'm done. But I got to tell you a couple of things about her that are just drive me nuts after today. She is also heavily funded by Putin apologists. These are people who are American citizens, but who support Putin, which means maybe they get some money on the back end for Putin. And her initial campaign, at least, was funded by people who are, in the Putin fan club. And it's not enough for her to say it's fake news because it's credible information and it's gotten from the Federal Election Commission. Plus, take a look at this group of endorsements.
This is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, David Duke, Mike Cernovich, Richard Spencer, and Jack Posobiec. I mean, these are, white nationalists are us, basically. Trump supporters through and through endorsing Tulsi. This is who the Democratic Party is putting up on the stage. This is someone who claims to be a Democrat, but boy, oh boy, I don't believe she is. Finally, take a look at this. She was vetted by the Trump administration for a job at the Veterans Affairs, a senior job, maybe the secretary. So, and the vetting document is legit and really interesting reading if anyone wants to take a look at it. But it does tell you that there's a lot more going on here between Tulsi and Trump and Putin than meets the eye. And that's why I think there were bots on the Russian side supporting Tulsi last night. And that no, she was not the winner of the debate. And I'll leave you with one clip, I think taped right outside the White House, conveniently, probably with White House hair and makeup people. Take a look at this.
Because if the president had been indicted for conspiring with Russia to interfere with and affect the outcome of our elections, it would have precipitated a terrible crisis that could have led to civil war. So we should all be relieved that President Trump was not found to have colluded with the Russians.
No, Tulsi, it would not have precipitated that crisis. It would have returned things to order.
A civil war?
She did, yeah. This is a vet who's against war, so it makes sense, right? Meanwhile, she's supporting the guy who is basically a warmonger. I can say this about Tulsi Gabbard. I'm not surprised that people on the Drudge Report who are conservatives voted for her to win the Democratic debate because she's essentially a conservative. She doesn't belong in the Democratic Party. She is being influenced heavily, and her support is being influenced heavily by foreign and outside influences that make absolutely no sense. She should not be allowed to run, and she should be investigated for all the support around her. So maybe it's time they take a look at her a little bit more closely.
The first interview she did last night after the debate was with Breitbart. I mean, that should just tell you something right there.
And the funniest thing today was fighting off a bunch of bots telling me there's no bots. I'm like, you're a bot. I can't even argue against you. You're a machine. Tracie, it's that time of the day. It's my favorite time of the day because it's time for the Tweet of the Day.
Yay!
Look at the time. It's almost 8 o'clock on the East Coast.
Oh my gosh.
We've been talking.
We're only an hour away from
I've been ranting.
night 2 of them debates. So
Them
exciting.
debates.
So I gave the winner of Tweet of the Day, and it was actually from last night, in all fairness, to Julian Castro. Can you show it?
Oh, sorry. I thought I was showing it. I'm looking at it
No.
right here. I was looking so pleased at it. So here it
Dan
is.
Rather sent out a tweet that said, "One last thought. How many people think Julian Castro had a good night?" And he responded, Me. I loved it. I just thought it was cute. Some humor for us.
Yeah, he also got a real spike in his donations today, and as we said earlier, it could be the death knell for Beto O'Rourke, and also he's a rising star and a great politician. Is Castro? So it'll be interesting to see how things shape up amongst the younger folk in the candidates list over there. Well, that's our show for tonight. We've got to get ready for
I'm
a
super
debate.
excited about tonight. I think that there's going to be some sparks, a little bit more than last night.
Okay,
So.
but you're going to hold your thoughts for us until tomorrow, right? You're not going to let loose on
I'll
Twitter.
try. I'll
Well, you
try.
can let some of them out. Tell me again who you're looking out for tonight. Who are you most interested in?
Well, I have two. Can
All
I
right.
pick two?
Yeah, you can do as many as you want.
Eric Swalwell
Yes.
and Kamala Harris.
All right. I'll say Joe Biden because I am interested in all those guys. But and I will say Pete Buttigieg is really smart. And if anyone can
he's
wiggle his
super
way
smart.
out of this nightmare that he's in, he
Yeah,
can
and
do
what
it.
languages is he going to talk in tonight? We had lots of Spanish last night, but Pete could give us like 5 other languages.
Right, he
tonight,
could,
so.
and it is a small issue ultimately that he's facing, and it can be fixed. We need you to support us in order to continue to bring you these live shows and our investigative journalism. So please go to patreon.com/narrative and become a member for just $3 a month. You get to get in a community and hear from us in a way that is much more intimate than here on Twitter and on Periscope. And we really appreciate every dollar that is donated to us because every single cent of it goes to producing this content and making sure that those guys are held accountable for all the corruption that's going on in America right now. And we're determined as anything to keep doing it until we can't. So that's the show for tonight.
Please subscribe, become a member. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good night. I have to find something here to play goodbye to, so let me see if this works. Yes, this will work. This will work.
You got it, Zev.
This will work. Good night, everybody.